Well, it's still, many things to celebrate indeed. Well, we know where Madam Josephine Ugu is coming from, and there are so many other people living in the same environment in IDPs spread all over, some parts of the Northeast. And that's what we'd like to give a little more attention to now, to make a little case for people who live in IDPs and how they ought to be given the kind of attention that they need. We'll go now to the Special Advisor on Media and Strategy to Borno State Governor, that's Issa Gusau, as well as the Executive Director, Women in Nigeria and Youth Empowerment Initiative, human rights activist Lucy Unana in Borno State. Thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to begin with you, the Special Advisor on Media and Strategy to Borno State Governor. Please tell us what government has done in Borno State now so far as IDPs are concerned. We understand that something in the region of 1 trillion naira has been spent in over IDPs in the past few years.
Well, thank you so much. The problem had always been the issue of coordination. What the governor has focused so much on is enhancing coordination. Recently, he has appointed a woman that is globally respected, Dr. Mero Mandara, as a special advisor and coordinator of humanitarian activities. An agency is being established. Last week, there was a public hearing organized by the State House of Assembly with the participation of humanitarian actors in Borno State. Hopefully, the bill will be passed into law in the next couple of weeks, and we should have an agency that will be channeled with proper coordination of humanitarian activities. That is not to dismiss the efforts of the State Emergency Management Agency, which had done so much over the years. So there is a lot of coordination, and of course there is a lot of focus on reconstruction of communities that are safe. So much is going on. You would recall that the governor went to all the 27 local government areas. I know that 300 houses are being built in Mafa. Another site has just been created for another 300 houses in Dikwa. Another about 1,000 houses are going to be built in Mongono. And I know that a committee is to be inaugurated today for another 500 houses in Maiduguri. So there's a lot of focus on resettling of the IDPs. And like I said from the beginning, coordination has been seriously enhanced. I want to believe that we should have an end to the problems that we have had.
Okay, let's bring in Lucy Unana for a moment. I understand you have a passion for women and youth, and we understand that in this, this crisis that has lasted for a decade, women and children have been the most affected. So as a matter of an update of sorts, can you tell us from what you have seen on ground, what is the state of women and children? Yes, of course, you tell us about the men also, but how are they doing now? Seeing, the initiatives that have been put in place, there's the NEDC, there's the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and some other policies. How well are they faring as it stands right now?
Thank God. Thank you very much for bringing me on board. The women in Borno State now are trying very hard. They have been resilient. And then the cases of gender-based violence is underreported in my state. Why? Because of the culture and the tradition. And then we have a very proactive governor who is so passionate. He's so passionate about women and girls, and there's a lot of programs for empowering women and girls that is currently going on in Maiduguri by the state governor. And there's a lot of, like the IDPs in the camps, there's a lot of skills acquisition that is being taught to them in the camp and even outside the camp, like the special advisor on media said there are some houses that have been even allocated to women and widows in the state.
All right. So I mentioned the Northeast Development Commission on one hand, and then the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. They play a major role. Of course, the ministry especially plays a major role in this process of rehabilitating IDPs in the Northeast, making sure that they go back to their homes and, rebuild their lives. So as a matter of, specifics, what roles would you want them to play specifically in rebuilding the Northeast and rehabilitating people that have been at the receiving end of this crisis?
What I would advise the commission is to make sure that in peace building, women should be involved. They should be allowed to participate. Because when during the past years of the insurgency, women were not brought in to discuss about conflict or peace building. But with the coming of this administration, there's a lot of opportunities being given to women to participate in all these aspects. And I will urge the woman, that's Dr. Mero Mandara, who is a woman, like there's an adage that says a woman knows the problem of a fellow woman. She's a very proactive person who has a knowledge about all the crises in Borno State. She has done so many things before even she was being appointed. So I urge her to make sure that the percentage of women should be more than the men.
Mr. Gusau, Mr. Gusau, you mentioned that the challenge of coordination of rehabilitation activities, for people living, the internally displaced persons in Borno. How is government tackling that issue? What are the elements that are disjointed that you feel need to be coordinated better?
Yes, I said that earlier. When you have a conflict situation with a lot of humanitarian actors, each one coming with a particular mandate, you are bound to have sometimes duplications. You might have even the issue of prioritizing, because you might have an agency that is coming to help, and then when they are coming to bring may not necessarily align with the priorities of the people. And then apart from that, we had instances where we had the PCNI, the VSF, you had the NEMA, you had the state emergency. So there was a lot of coordination gap. But I think we had the State Emergency Management Agency, which had done a lot, given the fact that the agency was saddled with the opportunity with the job of facing a crisis that it hadn't experienced in the past. But I think both the federal government and the state government have had the opportunity of learning from all these experiences. Now, we have a Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs under a woman that has had a fair knowledge, of the issues at the state level. Like I said, an agency is about being set up. A special advisor has already been appointed to coordinate that agency. I know that about 2 weeks ago, the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs came and organized a workshop that had to do with synergizing efforts of humanitarian workers with the security agencies. So I think the whole issues are being addressed. So I think we are very optimistic that all of this, but like I said, the focus of Professor Babagana Omar Zulu is to have these IDPs returned to safe communities with their dignity. Because instead of continuing to allow camps to flourish, he feels that places can be identified close to camps. For instance, like you can have resettlement areas that are within Maiduguri where you can build permanent places for people to live. So that is the focus of the governor. The focus of the governor is he wants to have as many houses as possible so that a lot of these IDPs can be permanently resettled with means of livelihood created for them.
We understand, Mr. Gusau, that from the 2019 Internal Displacement Monitoring Committee that something in the region of 1.2 trillion naira was spent on by the federal government and about 2 or 3 states, including Borno State, of course, Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa states, between January 2014 and December last year. And we understand also that the highest financial burdens come from the impact of health, housing, and livelihoods of these displaced persons. You have talked about the elements of housing. It definitely gives one cause for concern when we talk about the health elements of their livelihoods, as well as a number of other things. Now, you're talking about them being moved to the permanent locations. How is the security elements taking care of that to ensure that when they eventually go back to their permanent abode, they do not return to these IDPs, these camps?
Okay, like I said, I talked about resettlement communities within places like Maiduguri, places like Mafa, places that are that we all know they are secured. Now, in the resettlement policy of the governor, you know that Governor Babagana Zulum was the pioneer commissioner of reconstruction, rehabilitation, and resettlement. He was a consultant to the World Bank. He has vast knowledge about this issue of rehabilitation and post-conflict situation. He knows a lot about it, and he's well respected by the international partners. So the number one focus in all the resettlement plans of the governor is security. One, there must be security. We must be sure that there is security in that place before the issue of resettlement, is even thought about. And there is no compulsion. Of course, you know that the international policies all over the world frowns against forcing any displaced persons to return to any particular community. So there is no compulsion. And of course, in terms of the resettlements, houses are not just built. When houses are built, basic facilities are normally provided. Of course, the number one is healthcare. You know, if you go to all the houses that have been rebuilt, all the communities, more than 30,000 houses were rebuilt in the last 8 years in Borno State. And then within the last 3 months under Professor Babagana Zulum, we are close to about 1,000 houses being built. Now, in each of the places where these houses are built, hospitals are built along with them, schools are built, and then shops and other means of livelihood are built, and then there is so much focus on agriculture. As we speak, I would want you to deploy your reporter, to go and verify these things. There are a lot of farm establishments that are now taking place along, particularly within the central part of Borno State and in the northern part, in the southern part of the state. So it's a comprehensive kind of package.
Now, if you could give us a time frame, Mr. Gusau, how long do you think it will take till we achieve this permanent resettlement such that we can look to the Northeast? In fact, like you said, send our reporters and see that, the IDPs have gone back home and things are back to normal. If you could give a time frame, how long are we looking at?
I will tell you we are looking at now. I would say the reason is because as houses are built, IDPs are resettled. That is how we do it. If you go to Bama, for instance, about 11,000 houses were rebuilt in Bama by the previous administration, and IDPs were resettled. If you go to virtually most of the local government, about 30,000 houses were built, and each of the houses that were built, people were resettled. And right now, 300 houses are being built in Ajiri village in Mafa. And I will tell you, as soon as these houses are completed, if they are completed today, IDPs will be allocated these houses. So the houses are built, hospitals are built, schools are built, means of livelihoods are created, and IDPs will be resettled. So it's going to be a continuous process. It will be wrong of me to tell you that by next year we hope to resettle all the IDPs. The wish of the governor is to resettle the IDPs even today. And I will tell you, he is very aggressive in the rebuilding, and works are actively taking place. And as soon as these houses are completed, IDPs will occupy them. But like I said, the most important thing to the governor, as always, is safety. We must ensure that IDPs are only allowed to return to safe communities where basic necessities of life, particularly in terms of healthcare, education, and means of livelihood, are provided.
Right. Mr. Gozo, just give us a moment. We'll be back after this time out to take your closing comments. Stay with us.